So my first thing about events is, and that's why we've put in the invitation, it's not a webinar. Webinars are just one-to-many, and they have a value, but let's try and work out ways that actually engage people, which capture their imagination, which help them change. The next thing that I think is very important, and this is from doing too many events where I've been involved in ones that are done at rather short notice, and so on. The need for planning ahead of time, ideally at least 6 weeks ahead of time, cannot be stressed, because especially in these curious times, the dissemination of information, the trickling down of information, can take quite a little bit of time. So don't presume that because email is instant or Facebook is instant, that people will immediately clock that this is a good event. The most successful event I've been involved in the last while, where we had 495 people register for it and over 270 attend. We had a full 6 weeks. We had a very compelling subject, Black Lives and Climate Justice, and an outstanding speaker in Geoffrey Palmer, one of the first Black professors appointed in the UK, who lives in Edinburgh, or just outside. Events which we've had only a week or two's notice, we've had a couple of dozen register and maybe a dozen attend. So this is some of the things to think about. The next thing is, I'm going to go through some of the tools. So I'm at the moment convener of the events circle for communities as for SCAN, the Scottish Community Climate Action Network. We have a little subgroup effectively within our network who's responsible for events. Somebody else is responsible for communications. Somebody else is responsible for members. So we've started to divide up the roles so that we've got, and we can spend a bit of time, and this is using sociocratic decision-making processes and structures. So I encourage you to look at Sociocracy for All, which is an organization in the United States, but it could be anywhere, which helps demystify consensus decision-making, as in consent, and ways of structuring ourselves in a way which is helpful. We plan ahead. Ideally, we've already started planning ahead meetings which we will be holding in January. So we've penciled in dates for those. Now they may change, but we've already started to plan ahead. That's the first thing, is planning ahead, but then the next thing is you need to share your idea with the world. The tool that I've used extensively is Eventbrite. Now there are other ones. There's Ticketmaster, there's brown paper tickets, and I'm sure there will be increasing numbers as things go by. But I'm afraid I've just continued to use Eventbrite. It's very easy to log in. And again, for transparency, what we've done is we've established for SCAN, for instance, an Eventbrite entity which has an alias login, and we share among the events team the password for that, so that when I was going over with Joanna about how we effectively set up an Eventbrite, Joanna and I were able to be on it at the same time. the organizing things through Eventbrite is almost subject of another whole other session, but we will probably eventually try and put in some of those notes into the session. The main thing for us is to ask supplementary questions, as well as who it is and which organization sometimes we ask. We ask, may we add your name to our mailing list? In this way, and it's a yes, no, and you have to permit people to say no, of course, if they're on already or if they just don't want to be on the mailing list for our monthly newsletter. This is a way of complying with the General Data Protection Regulations, GDPR, and enables us to add their names to another tool which I mentioned, which is Mailchimp, which is an application. And in the same way, we've established Mailchimp as a common access thing so that we can pass that password to other people who are doing a newsletter. In my view, and I'm always dismayed at the number of people. Sorry, at the number of people who put events up, and it's not even anywhere near what the topic is or the date and the time. So I think it's really important to put the date and the time in the first 15, 20 words that are available to you. I actually put it into the name of the event on Eventbrite, which has got 140 characters. So be really clear so that people can just see it. I also make a 2x1 image just using an ordinary software tool like Word or something to take a picture, which is compelling and interesting. And then I put a text box on top with the details of the event. And then I take a screen grab of that and I drop that in as the image. And this enables it to be a compelling, attractive image, and enables you to oh, actually, before I forget, I think we're going to be just enough to only need 3 rooms, Joanna, aren't we, in the end? Yeah. No, now this is interesting. I talked about 495 to get 270. Again, for Zoom meetings, 49 people have registered for tonight, for this afternoon, and 25 of us. So it's just about half of the people actually make it. Other people might have expressed interest. Yeah. To get back to Eventbrite, and then I put right in the from the beginning, a bit like a press release, you have to have in the first sentence all the details, like a snake grabbing you, to have the all the details about when it is, where it is, and what the topic is and what the purpose is. Then you can ask maybe a few questions that would be inviting people and indicating what the type of event is about. And then I put the link to the event in the description of the event. I think this helps. Then I need to move on. So then we advertise it. So but before we leave Eventbrite, there is a facility within Eventbrite to post it to Facebook. And in Facebook, you can invite co-hosts. So this is one of the first ways that we get the word out. We've invited, for this event, Transition Network. I think maybe that's how Uppsala is here, and so on. We've invited a wider network of people through sister organizations. And this is the other thing about any event, is that it's all very well us doing an event and the people who follow us in our bubble, But what we're trying to do all the time is to collaborate with other organizations like the Coburn Association in Edinburgh, or ELREC, which Jean-Mathieu works for his day job, Edinburgh and Lothian's Regional Equalities Council, and so on. So if you then do that, you draw more people in so they can be infected by some of the ideas which we're wanting to share. Facebook then, you can obviously boost, as they call it, which is paying Mark Zuckerberg lots of money into his pockets, which is already stuffed. More effective probably is to, by sharing and posting and inviting, actually within the networks that you know, and it's probably more cost effective to invite somebody for 25 or 30 pounds to spend some time sitting at their computer doing that sharing, and looking to other warm list people who are in organizations that might be useful or might find the event useful. Then coming to the event, you'll see that today we had the first 10 minutes of the event. Joanna was welcoming people. It's very important that you just don't have that funny, awkward silence at the beginning. Welcome people, explain about some of the tools and processes that we're using. Those of you who've clicked on the link will have seen that we've established a Google Doc, which has got the main words of the Eventbrite in there. And then if you go scrolling down that, you'll see that there's a place where Jean-Mathieu at the moment is typing in some of these points that are useful. And you can do this by taking your Zoom box and move it up, and then you've got the document beneath on your laptop. It seems to me very important. I've talked about 20 minutes attention span in face-to-face. It's 15 minutes and I'm nearly up to my time now when you stop and pause. But I'm going to say, I'm going to break my rules and say just a few more words about, as Joanna has mentioned, is this role of facilitation, is that, and the role of the breakout room, is that it's essential that people have their own voice and they find a voice. Now, of course, you can pass in the go-rounds, but the role of the facilitator is to invite people to go around. We would always be sitting in a circle. We wouldn't be facing one person or facing the top table or anything. We would be in a circle, and so we have to visually. And what we suggest is that the facilitator actually draws a little diagram for themselves on a piece of paper with people's names, and so that way then you can make sure you don't lose track of anybody. Climate emergency, climate crisis is something which is really confusing for us all. In a way, we're like rabbits in the headlights. We don't know what to do, and this is one of the biggest challenges. So we need to acknowledge grief, anxiety, and so on. So the first question that we nearly always ask is, after we've had this is a rather a boring sort of provocation. This is just a sort of a knowledge share for this event. But for other events, what you're trying to do is to get people, grab people and get them. And it's quite often upsetting. So you ask, first of all, how do you feel? Well, how does that make you feel? And to acknowledge that this is a human, we're not just head or heart as well. And then in the breakout group, to have always at least 30 minutes, ideally 40 minutes. We're going to have 35 minutes, I hope, today, when you allow people to have enough time together. We try and make a maximum of 8 people in each breakout room. So I've had 20 breakout rooms in the one with Jeff Palmer. It's possible. And then each breakout group takes notes into the thing. And you ask one thing which is forward-looking. When we've been having face-to-face, we often invite people to say, where would you like to be in 2030? So that we get people thinking positively about the sort of society that we want. And then we can say, well, how can we get there? But on Zoom, it's better to just have, how are you feeling? And just only keep it to one question. And the idea is that it's trying to be action orientated, what can be done, and so on. What we've always tried to do then is to capture this in this harvesting documents, edit it with all the notes from the chat log and put them in. And in that way, we're able to provide a snapshot of all the learnings that's been gathered from an event. And that's where I think I should stop.
Thank you, David. Well, I hope this very comprehensive explanation from David about how we run events at SCAN and Transition Edinburgh was helpful. I'm going to pass the word now to Jean-Mathieu, SCAN's network weaver, so he can speak about his own perspective from a network weaver at a network organization and how the event component of his role comes to play.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks everybody for coming. Can everybody hear me okay to start with? Yeah. So you can raise your hand. How many of you already actually do online events? Okay, I think most of you. So that's great. I mean, I think in the breakout rooms, it'd be very interesting to hear from each other, because I think that's what we want. I mean, a lot of things have already been covered by David, but I think, okay, obviously we start with what's our target audience? Who are we trying to reach? Is it the already converted, you know, those who are already aware of all the climate actions and everything, or is it another audience? If it is another audience, then perhaps it is quite important to see what's at heart to them and what really matters to them. So I talk here both from you know, my LREC hat and my SCAN hat, because the audiences are very different, and every time the message and the type of event will vary. So that's really the first step, obviously. Well, I'll just cover some of the things David has already mentioned, but obviously having a compelling speaker and a topic that is current and topical, controversial, possibly, is always a great start, because with all those social media algorithms, once there is already a bit of interest on social media, obviously the event becomes more, it snowballs, so it becomes it pops on people's walls and different platforms. So it always helps to attract this initial attention with, yeah, a catchy title or a main speaker who already perhaps has some audience. David mentioned co-hosting, so different kind of technical things around promoting the event. Of course, it's always great to actually do events in partnership with other organizations who again might have a different audience and following, and make sure that the partnership is really participatory, where everybody's got a say in building the event. And that will obviously help if volunteers are able perhaps to share in different, if we're talking about Facebook, different Facebook groups. That's always a great asset, as well as to invite people to the Facebook event. That's for the technical thing. Another thing is the option of having paid events. I mean, I'm sure you may have had the experience already that very surprisingly and counterintuitively, sometimes paid events get more attention. And why it is because in psychology, when you pay for something, you tend to value it more. So definitely, number one, you'll have a better attendance rate, and then number two, there'll be more attention on the first place, possibly. So that's also something that I've experienced. And for example, if I may remember at Elrec, I mean, we did one film screening that was not an online event, but yes, that was an event organized in partnership with the cinema. So we had the cinema price of £12, and we had the most number of participants, which was very surprising. I think around 140 people turned up. But this is not to say that this should be systematic, because depending again on your audience, you might want to allow for concession, or people who are more vulnerable and who might not be able to afford paying for a ticket. So there needs to be some adjustments made there, but keeping in mind that although it sounds counterintuitive to have paid tickets, it can be also a useful feature. Okay, I don't think I have much time really. So David also mentioned building your database. I mean, that really is the number one thing when you get events. You want to be able to capture people's information so that they can be aware of your future events. That's really the most important. And also find the platform that your community uses. Perhaps it's Facebook, perhaps it's not, perhaps it's perhaps those things don't work, and you need to perhaps just send an email with a Zoom link without any separate Eventbrite or Facebook. But it all depends on really how your community engages. Well, I think I'm looking forward to the discussion in the breakout rooms, because I didn't have much time. But we see each other in the groups. But thank you very much.
We've been bombarded with the pandemic for months now, and we might think that we should still keep our heads down. But now is the time when it's actually very important for us to be advocating for a just and green recovery. It's even more important that we find the right topics that can capture people's imagination to see this as part of the society that we want, and to be able to advocate in a responsible and interesting and a challenging way. So I really think that online events is here to stay. Thank you so much for all the contributions and the ideas that you've all shared, each of you. We will try and bring these together and publish an online little guide. There's already a link in the document to the Zoom Corporation guide about engaging online events, which is a sort of a straightforward thing. What we're trying to do is to tease out some of the tips and tricks that are specific to what we found works well in Scotland. The most important thing is for everybody to find their voice, for active listening, because this is the most compelling thing that gets people to think, I'll change from being afraid or it's over there to I can do something. And so I wish you all well with a couple of ideas that you might have picked up today, and so on. For the three of us within SCAN, we're very open to assisting any member of SCAN, and of course all of you are invited to join SCAN as a national network. But each of us would be willing to help coaching and sharing ideas about how what we've learned anyway. So I'm really grateful for all your time. I've put in the chat just an invitation to say what went well, or particularly more useful is what could be better next time. I saw that the note about the icebreaker video. Yes, if it's a longer meeting, at the beginning of the day, of a 2-day European meeting, we were just thrown in a room and had a couple of minutes each. And it's just that way of finding your voice. So whether it's physically finding your voice or finding your voice in the chat, that's what you want to start be doing, to engage people, to think that they've got a role in making the change. Let's close now. It's a couple of minutes after 12:30, and just a very big thank you.